Last week, out in Japan, starter decks 15 through 20 released. It's the biggest introduction of starter decks in a single moment since the game first released in Japan, and it's so cool to see. If you don't know, these starter decks comprise of all old leaders, reprinted from either previous starter decks or main sets. Edward Newgate, Uta, Doflamingo, Luffy, Smoker, and Katakuri. As we've started to see this trend of reprinted cards in these starter decks, these take it to a whole new level, primarily being all reprinted cards, but each of them having their own selection of brand new cards into the game, unique to these starter decks. Through this past weekend, these starter decks actually became legal for play, and although we don't have a championship series like I originally thought, my apologies on that, the first one being this upcoming weekend, which we will cover here on the channel, and we will do commentary videos as always, so make sure to like, comment, subscribe, blah blah blah. 10,000 subs and we'll read One Piece, the whole shebang of it, not just watching it, reading the entire thing. But it's been really interesting as someone who follows a lot of Japanese Twitter, seeing exactly what is excelling, what is making leaps and bounds and winning and producing good results at tournaments with these new starter deck cards. I'm going to show you a ton of different lists that I've seen online through these starter decks, and we're just going to go through them one by one. Now, this is a post from 12Ja on Twitter. Also follow me on Twitter, Atrocious Jake, if you like Twitter. I don't know if they ran this tournament or just participated in it, but they got information of the top 4 decks from this 20-person tournament that was held. Now, 20 people may not seem like a ton to you. In the grand scheme of things, it's not. But I still wanted to talk about this tournament because if you look in here, the top 3 decks are literally all Smoker. Smoker, one of the new starter decks, has plenty of good reprints like brand new. You got the Rosinante in here, Suru, a very valuable 2K with Virgo as well, another great 2K Ice Age, and plenty of new cards that excel in definitely a ton of levels, especially this Hina Tashigi combo. Taking a look at this deck list, it's so familiar of the old Sakazuki, right? That OP05 leader that is banned, just without the blue cards. Keeping the addition of the Brook, having a nice split of different characters in here. You're running your 2K options of Suru, Tashigi, and a couple different T-Bones. You've got your Rebecca Hino combo right here, which is real good. Ice Age is real nice. Kuzan, super great synergy as well with the geckos that you have to run in these decks, along with some other great big bodies with the Jack and OP08 that we see a ton of, and Isho, which has gotten a lot of popularity since OP07 released. One thing that you'll see across all Smoker decks is a 4 of the new Tashigi. This Tashigi, a 5-cost 6,000 power character with 1,000 counter as a Navy type character, says on play, if your leader is Smoker, up to one of your opponent's characters gets -4 cost for the turn. An insanely strong effect because, well, your leader is Smoker. You are going to get that -4 cost every single time, which is so strong, especially when you talk about having the synergy with something alongside the Kuzan, alongside the Hina, especially alongside Smoker's leader effect of minusing another one. Any character that is a 5 cost on your opponent's side of the field is going to be able to hit 0, which can lead to a lot of great effects like the Brook. Remember that the Brook on play or when attacking pops 0 cost characters. But going back to the Tashigi as well, it has an activate main once per turn. If it's the turn this character was played, trash up to one of your opponent's 0 cost characters. So on a 5 Dawn turn, so let's say you're on the 6 Dawn turn, attaching 1 Dawn to your leader Smoker and then having this Tashigi hit the field, you're gonna delete an opposing character's 5 cost character that they just played on that previous turn, especially with the early game searching options in this engine of not only brand new but the new Sengoku. The new Sengoku, a 1 cost 1,000 counter Navy type character, says on play you trash 2 Navy cards from your hand. If your leader is a Navy type, draw 3 cards. Trashing any 2 cards of your deck that have really great synergy with not only Rebecca Rebecca, but with the Gecko on field is so good in this deck. I am so excited to potentially play Smoker once these starter decks release. This is just a really cool deck, especially a leader that has not had a ton of limelight for a while, especially if you started playing when there was a lot of popularity gained in like OP05. You have never seen this leader probably before. Such a cool deck. Such a really fun thing, and just taking a look at the the different deck lists and how things could be a little bit different. This person kind of opting more for the starter deck Smoker right here, the one that gains the double attack instead of having like the Isho in here, and also kind of cutting down a little bit on the Ice Ages for 4 T-Bones. And then the third place list opting instead for the 6 cost Sakazukis, things that if you've been on the channel for a while, you know that I said during like OP05, hey, buy your Sakazukis, right? Buy these 6 cost Sakazukis, because guess what? A lot of people are playing them now in OP07, just like I saw, and now people are still playing them today in these decks. Really, really cool to see these 2 decks come alive, or really this one deck come alive. Oh, also playing the Navy HQ in this build. That's a nice card, I think, especially without a ton of stage removal in this deck and plenty of search options. Search/draw options is what I should say. Although no Sabo in this deck list is pretty scary to me, I would say. I'm very scared of a non-Sabo deck. The 4th place list we're going to go over, however, is Blue Purple Crocodile. So a lot of people might not even know about this leader because it has fallen so far from the wayside. It is not, I don't know if Blue Purple Croc has really ever been meta. But to give everybody a reminder on the leader effect, especially myself, I'm gonna be honest here. Blue Purple, 7 Warlords of the Sea and Baroque Works types. So you're gonna be able to get the purple synergy of the Baroque Works that we got in like EBO1 and stuff, and OP04, I think. And then just the 7 Warlords of the Sea shenanigans that happened in the very beginning of the game, but also in recency OP07. Dawn ×1, when you activate an event, you may draw 1 card if you have 4 or less cards in your hand and haven't drawn a card using this leader's effect during the turn. That's a really odd way to say once per turn. So playing this list, you have access to a ton of different event cards that you love in here, right? You've got the Gum Gum Rain, you've got the Purple Gum Gum Gatling to constantly be able to trash different cards and get that 3000 power. Excellent thing about this is that it's a 2-card combo as well. So if you have 6 cards in hand on the defense and you end up playing this event, you're going to go down to a 4-card hand, and if you have a Dawn attached, you're going to be able to draw a card, giving it a ton of flexibility in this deck. O Come Away or O Come My Way is an excellent card for any purple Baroque deck that I really think you should play. And then you've got some of the better blue event cards in this meta of Red Rock and Gravity Blade. This deck, at least on the purple side, is playing plenty of ramp early with the Zorojuro and also the Bon Clay Mr. 2. You've got some Miss Double Finger for that potential trigger, but also just being a 2K is nice. And then your top end cards are the Crocodiles, which you may already have and be familiar with if you're a lover of purple yellow croc. And also the new 9-drop Charlotte Linlin. Honestly, just an incredible card in this game, and definitely an inclusion that you would want in the deck, especially when you seem to have a decent amount of good draw power through your leader effect and also restacking abilities through the Buggy, right? The new Buggy that we see, and also the Doflamingo blocker along with this ace right here. Actually, does this Boa reorder as well? Hold on, we're gonna pull up the Doflamingo deck as well. There's a couple cards that we're gonna talk about in this deck anyway, so might as well pull up the official translation so we don't get anything wrong in here. The Doflamingo deck is another one of the starter decks, primarily geared towards the 7 Warlords of the Sea. This Buggy being a 2K and a 1 cost that reorders the top 3 cards of your deck. An excellent card that we see in regular Doflamingo builds and also now in this purple Crocodile build. The Boa Hancock, a new SR and great inclusion in a lot of different 7 Warlords decks, on play does also get to reorder the top 3 cards of your deck. But on top of that as well, you get to give your leader a rested Dawn. So gives Crocodile its ×1 Dawn needed on your 4 Dawn turn. For the rest of blue, not a lot of cards that we haven't mentioned already in this deck. The 9-drop Sanji is the top end for blue that you're really looking for, and the Sanji is really crazy, especially on a 10 Dawn turn. Think about this. You play Buggy, right? You get to look at the top 3 cards. In those top 3 cards, you find Charlotte Linlin. Through the Sanji effect, you reveal this card. You get to play this card on the field because Sanji specifically specifies just a 9 cost or lower character. It doesn't specify any color restrictions. So you get to play this, add a life, and then put a 6 cost or lower character into your opponent's life. Or you could play this Crocodile. Or you could play like literally anything else in this deck. It's crazy to see this and the cool combos that you can potentially make in this. And I would love to see people continue to explore this archetype. Now looking at a couple different red decks that we've got going on. This one uploaded into One Piece top decks. Edward Newgate getting a little bit of a revitalization with the brand new card in the Newgate starter deck, the Ace. This Ace is actually an excellent character, a 5 cost 6,000 power character that if your leader is Whitebeard Pirates, you gain Rush. And similar to the trend that we've seen in a lot of different cards like the Basil Hawkins, like the Enel, it has a once per turn. If this character is going to be removed from play by your opponent's effects, you do something else instead. This Ace, going along with the theme of red, is going to give an opponent's character minus 2,000 power. And again, this is by any effects. So black decks, blue decks, yellow decks, even like green decks, or really just any deck in general. You're going to be able to get around that at least once per turn. And usually decks are only doing those types of different removal effects once per turn. This Ace is able to synergize well with a lot of different things in your deck, being searchable off the EZO, right? Searchable if you're also playing the Whitebeard Pirates event card, and goes well with a lot of the mid-range cards that you see, like the Marco combos. And also this new Atmos that's coming in the deck. I didn't realize that this was in the starter deck at first, but this Atmos, when attacking, if your leader is Edward Newgate, you cannot add life cards to your hand using your own effect during this turn. So on your 4-drop, so on turn 3 technically, because you can't swing the first turn that it's played, so you have to be on a 6 or you have to be on a 6 Dawn turn at least. Your leader effect doesn't happen. It does not happen. That's crazy. Remember Moby Dick, that 2-drop stadium card that is banned in the One Piece trading card game? Here's the next iteration of that card. Now I will say that Atmos is a character card, and especially as a 4-drop character card, it's pretty easy for several decks to remove it. But I'm just saying, if you don't immediately answer to this card, you're in a world of trouble. This Kingdu also being in this Whitebeard Pirates deck, 3 cost 4,000 power blocker, and on opponent's turn when this character is KO'd by an effect, up to one of your leaders gains 2,000 power during this turn. So similar to something like the Shirahoshi blocker that we saw released in EBO1 as in SR. If KO'd by effects, i.e. just not normal blocking, you get this additional power, which could be, I mean, is really good in this deck. You've got your usual top end that we've seen in the deck for a while now, the Ace, the Newgate, and then I know that this card hasn't been around very long in the meta, but a card that you wouldn't be surprised to see. Oh man, I love this. And then just looking at it a little bit longer, you've got Marco right here, right? Marco, one of the new OP08 leaders, also utilizes a lot of these different cards, like the Ace right here. You know, Thatch that came out in 15 as well. We didn't even talk about Thatch, was in the Newgate build and also in this one. On play, if your leader has Whitebeard Pirates included in its type, give up to one of your opponent's characters minus 2,000 power for the turn, then put the top card of your life into your hand. Especially as kind of like the later stages of the game, you'd be able to use that Atmos to swing and then play the Thatch and not have to take a life. This list, not playing the Atmos though, has plenty of other different options. Playing the the new SR Edward Newgate. It's a 7 cost 8,000 power character. On play, give your leader or one of your characters up to 1 rested Dawn. Then with an activate main resting that character, you KO one of your opponent's characters of 5,000 power or less. Just a strong effect in general for decks that sometimes do a little bit of power minusing as well, especially with this leader effect, right? Use that Edward Newgate, you get a Dawn onto your Marco, you can go ahead and use the leader effect to draw 1 card, bottom deck a card, or top deck the card if you want, and give a character minus 2,000 power for the turn. So on your 7 Dawn turn, you're going to be able to delete a 7,000 power character that's on your opponent's side of the field, especially when they just had their 6 Dawn turn, right? It's kind of crazy to think about the different combos that you can do with this deck, especially playing like Fire Fist as well, being able to take out multiple different cards. You've got Sanji's Pilaf in here, one of my favorite cards of all time. Just Pot of Greed, man. Really, really cool. Marco definitely gets a spike in starter deck 15. I don't know if it's going to be like incredible, I don't know if it's going to be great, but it was part of the Mazi Cup 3v3, the first place team that happened in the first days of these starter decks being available. Absolutely crazy. I've got a ton more starter decks to go through, so let's just keep on going along. We've got Purple Luffy now. Now, Purple Luffy is a deck that I really want to get back into. I really want to see Purple Luffy be successful, especially with the new starter deck cards that came in the starter deck for Purple Luffy. Now, Purple Luffy, activate main once per turn. You may add the top card of your life to your hand. If the amount of Dawn on your field is 0 or 3 or more, add up to 1 Dawn card from your Dawn deck as active, doing some ramping. We've seen this deck for a while, and that ramping leads to a ton of different possibilities, like the Poly, right? It's very common on a 6 Dawn turn to go ahead, use that leader effect and ramp 1 to be able to do a Poly play, giving you even more ramp and a little bit of removal. There's a couple new starter deck cards in this deck, so let's go ahead and talk about them one by one. Now, the first one is the Zoro Juro. This new starter deck, Zoro Juro, 4 cost 6,000 power. On play, you get to look at the top 5 cards of your deck, reveal a purple Straw Hat Crew type card, put it in your hand, place the rest at the bottom of your deck in any order. So allows you to have some search, and similar to something like the ulti, right, that Animal Kingdom blue card SR that nobody plays, just allows you to have some sort of later search options in a deck that's primarily playing Straw Hat cards. In a deck that's playing a ton of different Straw Hat cards, within the top 5, you're pretty likely to see one, I would think, even though you're running about half and half. This Luffy Taro is an excellent card as well. I've seen this in action over on some Japanese YouTube videos. This 7 cost 8,000 power character. On play, if you Dawn -1, play up to 1 purple character with a cost of 5 or less and Straw Hat Pirates type from your hand. So an excellent card in combination. Not only the Zoro Juro that we talked about earlier being a 4 cost, is this Sangoro. This Sangoro being a 5 cost 6,000 power character, when attacking once per turn, draws a card every time you have 8 or more Dawn in your turn when you're using that attack. It's an excellent mid-range card that can be used later in the game, especially in combination with this Luffy Taro to get on the field, and is so nice to see. And especially maybe if you're down behind a little bit of Dawn through different effects like a previous Kaido or Queen, Magellan, right? Some typical cards that we've seen in Purple Luffy. You could even, through the Luffy Taro, play this Sanji, this OPO 7 6 cost character that becomes 3 if you have 2 or fewer Dawn cards than your opponent. Something that we see all the time in Red Purple Law. It's just crazy to see this deck. I absolutely love it. I hope it continues doing well. Won a 58-person tournament at the very beginning of when these starter decks were first released, so very excited. But there's one more card that we got to talk about in here before I forget, and it's this Uso Hachi. It is a 2K character right here, so another great 2K edition, especially a searchable 2K option. Now you have 2 different searchable 2K options in your Purple Luffy deck with the Sanji and Uso Sachi alongside the 2K option of ulti, because I mean, it's purple ulti page 1 combo. Like, why would you not play the ulti page 1 combo? It's so good when you get to play it, and if not, it's just counter cards. If you have 8 or more Dawn, rest up to one of your opponent's characters with the cost of 5 or less. So especially with something like Black Sabo running around, right? That 5 cost Black Sabo from OP04 being so strong. This is a late game card that allows you to rest that to be able to swing with your big bodies freely in this deck, like Kaido, like Luffy, even different mid-range cards that you may have on the field, like the Sangoro, the Zorojuro, Polly, Magellan. It's crazy what this deck could do. Let's stay on purple for a little bit and go into Purple Black King in OP08. This is by Ala9250 over on Twitter. Although they ended up falling in the final round, a really cool deck in my opinion to see in this tournament. Some Animal Kingdom Pirates. I know a lot of people were so excited for King when it was first announced that a lot of Animal Kingdom cards just spiked up. I sold my alt OP01 King during that time. It did go up a lot and has now gone back down. There's some familiar cards that we see in most all of these Animal Kingdom pirate decks. Onigashima, just a great card. Queen as well. You're playing some of the kings, those original starter deck kings, a great removal card, and especially with the OP08 Searcher Queen that you've got right here, just gives a lot of consistency that Animal Kingdom Pirates have lacked for so long. Now, if only purple could get that queen as well. Staying on the purple Luffy starter deck though, you've got this edition of the Nami, and this Onami with a 4-drop 1000 power counter but 2000 power Straw Hat Crew character is a blocker and has an on play of, if you have 8 or more Dawn cards on your field, trash 1 card from your hand and draw 2 cards. So a blocker at the beginning of the game, and even in the late stages of the game, maybe after you do some ramping right with Onigashima, because if you have Onigashima, you pretty much just like win games, right? You're going to be able to draw cards effectively every turn that you play this Onami. King, for anyone who needs a reminder, has an activate main once per turn, Dawn -2. Choose one of the following. If your hand has 5 or less cards, draw 1 card. Excellent if you feel like you're running low on resources and need to find certain pieces. Or give up to one of your opponent's characters -2 cost during the turn. So like that 2K Sakazuki that we see down here from OP08, that's another set of minusing that you can do for different characters, KOing through the king. Using this OP08 Kaido, which is so strong, not only deleting a 7 cost character from your opponent's side of the field, but also having them trash a card from their hand. There's a promo edition that the user said was really good in the deck, and so I want to talk about it a little bit. 6-drop 6000 power ulti Animal Kingdom Pirates with 1k counter. Once per turn, when 2 or more Dawn are returned to your Dawn deck, which can literally happen through the king effects, remember, because it is a Dawn -2. Add up to 1 Dawn from your Dawn deck as rested. Then set up to one of your purple sages as active. Oh my God, what? So if you have Onigashima on the field, think about this. It's your 6th Dawn turn, right? You play this ulti on the field. Use Onigashima, ramp 1 to 7 Dawn overall if you played Onigashima previously, which you probably did. Use the king effect, maybe just draw 1 card, right? Ulti activates because you return 2 Dawn to your deck. You bring 1 back, going from 5 because you use the leader effect back to 6. Then you get to restand Onigashima, use it again, and go back to 7. That's insane. That's crazy. Really just like looping this ulti effect. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. With Onigashima, you get to do the leader effect basically for free with this Onigashima ulti combo. Holy crap. I really hope that we get this ulti by the time I get to do these combos in English. Please don't put it in like a regional pack or anything. Please put it in a regular tournament pack. OP08 tournament pack ulti. Please. That's such a sick combo. You've got other high-end cards like that Charlie Linlin that we talked about earlier, and also the Isho. So no need to explain more. This deck is so cool. I know a lot of people that are probably going to be excited about this deck. We're not going to spend too much time on this Enel but did end up going undefeated in their tournament. This is by Amoharu50. Now, a lot of the typical culprits that you see in this deck, the aces, the Yamatos, you know, you got some Flampe's in there, Frankie, Luffy, blah, 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 blah. But there's one card, a one-card inclusion in here that comes from the starter decks that I want to talk about. From the Katakuri starter deck, this 6-drop Linlin SR 7,000 power for Emperors, Big Mom Pirates has an on-play effect that I think is worth noting. You may trash one card from your hand, your opponent chooses one of the following. So similar to a lot of Linlin stuff, right? Soul Pocus, the 7-drop Linlin from the original Charlotte Linlin starter deck has a choose one. Your opponent discards 2 cards from their hand. Not just one, but 2 cards, or they trash the top card of their life. That's insane. So something that we can see a lot more probably in like Katakuri decks or maybe Charlotte Pudding decks. But at least for now, this one doing really well with that one tech card. I don't know how well it did for them in this tournament because it is something that's like not searchable, similar to your other like high-end cards, but I guess it's like not really that different than any other high-end card that you play in this deck. You just hope to see it off your slew of 18,000 triggers that you play, or life cards that I guess that you see, because a lot of your, I mean, all of your high end doesn't have trigger, thank God. And again, I won't spend too much time on this part, but in the Shumai Cup 2-on-2 that they hosted, the second place team did have an Enel that also had a one of this. So Enel constantly having a one of this is something that we could probably expect in most Enel decks moving forward once these starter decks release and like bigger tournaments start happening and more tournaments start going on. Just 2 decks to go. One of them I know could be a fan favorite. It's Uta. This deck being credited by Watari Director over on Twitter, played this Uta deck in their 5-on-5 tournament. The team got 2nd place overall. I don't know the exact matchups that this player had, but if your team goes 2nd place in this 5-on-5 tournament, it probably did pretty well in my opinion. Uta is one of those decks that gets reformatted a little bit. A deck that we've seen be stagnant basically for so long ends up changing a bit with this new starter deck. Uta being one of the new starter decks overall has some new arts in here, so I'm going to go over each one of these arts with you just in case you aren't aware of what those cards exactly are. This is New Genesis, a new art for it. This is a new version of Backlight, and then this is the new I'm Invincible. So at least in terms of the events, everything is pretty much the same. But when you go in here and look at the deck, there's some new additions in here. The first one, this Monkey Day Luffy, is a new searchable 2K that you have in the Uta starter deck. If your Uta is rested, the character gains 1,000 powers. So if you need bodies to come out on the field through like your Brook, here's one that could be threatening in attacks in the next turn if it's not immediately dealt with. The Katakuri also included in this deck is a 3-cost 4,000 power with 1k counter film type character, so it is searchable off of your different searches. If your leader has the film type and you have 6 or more rested cards, this includes Dawn cards, this includes leader cards, this includes character cards, any rested card. This character gains 2,000 powers. So especially again, played off the Brook, it could be a threat in the next turn, especially at the later stages of the game for swinging 6 with no Dawn needed. Now, the last card I'll talk about in the Uta deck that you may have seen in that deck list is your high end, right? One thing that Uta kind of lacked in a lot of the different Uta decks is a searchable high end card, right? A lot of times your only searchable high end card was the Monkey Day Luffy, and if you played the 8-drop Eustace Captain Kidd, you had to hope that you drew it or got it off life, which is very, very tough, especially when you do a ton of searching off of Nami, off of your leader effect, off New Genesis. So this Shanks kind of tries to fix a lot of that. As a 9-cost 11,000 power character on play, you KO any rested character. That is any rested character on the field. Just KO a rested character. Your opponent swung with their Gecko Moria. Your opponent has an opposing Eustace Captain Kidd on the field that you need to get around. Kill it. An incredible inclusion for this deck that could give a new surge for Uta. I really like this build. Congratulations again to Atari Director. Definitely going to be a fan favorite. But the last deck that I'm going to talk about, I posted this in like the community Discord that we have here in Las Vegas, and I was like, oh my god, this deck is actually cracked. Like, I can't believe it. And people are like, what? Oh my goodness. This is credited to Yuna95 over on Twitter. They ended up winning this tournament with the new promo Sakazuki. Oh my gosh, this deck is insane. This deck is so whack in my opinion. This is also not how I would have thought that the blue promo Sakazuki would have been built. If you look at this deck and you look at it carefully, look at the cards that are included in here. It is basically a blue Doflamingo deck with really good black cards. Like, that's just literally what this deck is. Not something that I would have expected for a Navy type leader, a pure Navy type leader. In this, you're playing the culprit that we talked about earlier with the Buggy and also the Boa Hancock, right? Two cards that are included in the starter deck. I mean, are just good inclusions for this deck and are just good cards overall to play. I mean, you talk about the Buggy, right? Being a 2K that you can have that is actually searchable 2K with the engine that you're running. And then also just reordering in the early game, which can be really good, but also just playing the different culprits of 7 Warlords of the Seas in the Jinbei Edward Weevil combo, right? You got your Croc for another set of 2Ks alongside the Mihawks to run, I think, 10 2Ks overall. This Jozu, we've seen a little bit of splash in the OPOA Championship Series on the channel, being that 6-drop 7,000 power character on that on play, especially if you played some of the smaller bodies earlier, right? Sengoku, you played the Buggy. You can play down this Jozu, return one of your characters other than this Jozu into your hand, and then your opponent returns a 6-cost or lower character to their hand as well. Just a really good removal card that we've seen in some of these decks and is playable in here. It is a Whitebeard pirate, so you're gonna have to naturally draw into it, but honestly not that difficult of an issue when you talk about being able to reorder cards, right? With the Boa Hancock, the Doflamingo blocker that we talked about earlier, but also just being able to draw into it when you want to with the Weevil. The craziest thing about this though, the Sakazuki leader effect, it's like, it's basically useless. It's one of the only decks that I've ever seen be successful, right? I would call winning this tournament successful when you don't really even use your leader effect at all. And maybe they did use the leader effect. I don't know. They could have maybe. But like, I don't really see the reason to use the leader effect. I guess maybe to combo with the Jozu. The leader effect, if you do not know, it's an activate main once per turn. You trash a Navy type card from your hand. How many Navy cards does this deck play? I'll let you answer out loud. 3 Borsalinos. That's all the Navy cards that you have. I'm pretty sure, right? Is that all the Navy cards that you have? I'm pretty sure that's all the Navy cards that you have. If you do trash that card though, which has good synergies with the Gecko, don't forget, give one of your opponent's characters -1 cost for the turn. That's it. Just -1 cost. A leader that is so, I mean, just bad, right? Because you can't really even use this leader effect, but the best version of this deck that we've seen with this leader is one that disregards its leader effect entirely. It's actually crazy. I love this deck. I hope it becomes popular. I hope people start playing it because it is such a meme in my opinion. You get to utilize 2 really good colors, right? Blue being a really good color and then black just being a great color overall. Playing some great black cards in the Gecko and Borsalino like I mentioned, but also the CP0 event. I think it's called 6 King Pistol. And then just with blue, you do like Doflamingo stuff. 7 Warlords package. It's so cool. It's so cool to see this deck. That's it. that's all the decks that I saw online through these starter decks, at least through the, you know, these first couple days and stuff like that. I apologize for saying in previous videos that there was a tournament this past weekend that was happening through that had these cards legal. I accidentally got my dates mixed up. It's actually this upcoming weekend that the starter decks are actually legal for. So we'll cover it again on the channel. Thank you again so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I tried to make this video. This recording is so long. It's over an hour long recording. Oh my God. Hopefully you enjoy this hefty video talking about these different decks. Thank you again.